Psychology is all around us. Psychological elements can be seen throughout the lifespan, from birth until death. Films are a wonderful tool to explain psychological theory and occurrences in our lives. Characters interact within each frame of film psychological concepts. The films we remember most and view multiple times engage us by capturing the presence of these psychological dynamics in an authentic way. I invite you to join me, Dr. Catherine Marshall-Woods, licensed clinical psychologist and film consultant, and my guest today to discuss the best psychology in film. Welcome, Maceo. We are so fortunate to have you here to be able to talk about your film Paralysis. Can you tell us a little bit about your film?
Sure. So Paralysis is a short poetic film where bystanders are watching or witnessing a young Black man being brutalized by police. And the poetry or the spoken word in the film is the internal thoughts of the bystanders. So each poet is a bystander in the crowd, and we're hearing their thoughts as they're watching this young man fight for his life. And it's entitled Paralysis because the poets are paralyzed by the trauma that they're witnessing, and everybody else around is being chaotic. But each artist or each poet, they are kind of tapped into the same wavelength of trauma. So they're all operating on that wavelength. And that's why their poems are like synchronized so that we're hearing one stream of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. This is a beautiful piece of art, your film. Why don't we allow the audience to be able to see the trailer, and we will talk about it further in a moment.
Sure, let's do it.
When your skin resembles shades of brown, you're already dead to them. Hey, Mr. Willie. Another hashtag or say her name. We protest and we fight. We protest and we fight. We protest and we fight. But it's happening again. In another year, I'd have my first degree. Now I'm being first degreed, crushed under the weight of his stereotypes. Spent years playing society's game, helping the elderly, carrying women's bags. But who's gonna help my mother carry my casket?
I have to just begin. You had indicated that individuals are being exposed to a traumatic event, and what they are seeing is quite evocative. And I'm wondering what inspired you to be wanting to tell this specific story and show how individuals respond in this specific way.
Yeah, so I was mainly influenced by the George Floyd murder. That is like the catalyst of the brainstorming process that I went into with this film. But I've also, protested when Freddie Gray happened. I protested when Mike Brown happened. And just being there in those communities, specifically after Freddie Gray died, being in those communities before the riots or the uprising happened, and just talking to the people in those communities, and just, you could tell they were yearning for a voice, right? One woman was just walked up to me and just started talking. I wasn't, I'm not a reporter or anything like that, but she just wanted to be heard, right? And in that moment, I was able to hear her out. And I thought about how many other people who are in those situations aren't heard, right? Their voice isn't heard. And I thought about, these incidents that pop up around the country where we have Black unarmed people, men and women, who are either wrongfully convicted, wrongfully murdered. Justice is, not always served in these incidents. And we have the news media coming from all over the world, definitely all over the country, but other outlets are, publishing this globally. And I thought about, when all the news media storm dies down, these communities are still left in either the same conditions that they found them or even worse, right? And they don't have an outlet. I don't know of any like programs who come back in and talk about what they've witnessed, right? They just had their whole city, their whole neighborhood being broadcasted for something in such a negative light. And then it's like, cool, we're going to come in here and we're going to exploit this story, we're going to exploit your community, and we're going to, try to get our ratings up on all of our media channels, and then goodbye. That's it, right? And these people, to my knowledge, don't have an outlet to talk these things through, right? They got to go to work the next morning after witnessing this chaos, right? So it's just something that I thought of, and I was like, I wonder what those voices sound like, right? And a lot of times where we see these movies or these TV shows with it's talking about police departments, even the corrupt police departments, the way those stories or narratives are told, the police officers or law enforcement are still like the stars of the film. We're hearing it, and we're hearing the story being told from their perspective, right? And everybody in the community is kind of like a device to help tell the story, right? We really don't get to hear from them as much. So I wanted to just explore what the flip side of that looks like. What do these people feel? What do they have to say? What are their thoughts as they're watching this play out? What are their thoughts while they're watching it play out? And what are the thoughts, from history? Because this is not like a one-time incident. This is like an accumulation of trauma being built up over time. So I wanted to explore what those voices are. What do they sound like? And each poet in the film kind of represents those elements.
Mm-hmm. The amount of different perspectives that you offer through the spoken word is part of why this film, I think, is so compelling, because we are able to hear different voices. We're able to hear from their lens and what they've been exposed to previously, their history within the community, their responsibilities in the community, raising children in the community, what it's like to actually align with someone who is experiencing or being victimized, seeing themselves in that person as well. We are able to really get a good sense of various perspectives of the bystander. Judith Herman, in her book Trauma and Recovery, talks about that when a traumatic event happens, there's three roles that are being played out: a perpetrator, a victim, and a bystander. And you give voice to the bystanders, and how many voices and perspectives can be in that capacity. Whereas you're suggesting the media actually gives the voice to the perpetrators, potentially, because the victims are usually not able to speak, specifically in the situations you are allotted to, which are the individuals who lose their lives.
Yeah, definitely. I actually, during the pre-production process, I gave each poet like a character profile, right? So they went into the writing process knowing, having a good sense of who this character is in the story or the perspective that we're trying to convey to the audience, right? So for Dwayne, of course, the victim, his perspective is going to be totally different than a bystander because he's fighting for his life, right? Ebony, who's a single Black mother, she's witnessing it, thinking about, oh my gosh, that could very well be my son, and she feels hopeless that she has to raise her son in this community, or even a society where the life of Black men it's not valued, or they're thought of as less than, and they can very well become a victim just by walking down the street. Keyshawn, who's around the same age as Dwayne, is seeing himself where, oh, wow, if I was walking down the street at the same time he was, that could have been me, right? Mm-hmm. So he's having that conflict with himself. And then Mr. Willie, who's like he's like the pillar in the community. His whole perspective is a lot broader because he's seen more. So like he's seen these incidents play out before throughout history. And he's, he's having a conflict with himself, saying, how much more of this can I witness? If this ever going to change? I felt like I would be able to do something at this point in my life as the pillar of this community, but I'm still traumatized. I'm still paralyzed and I can't even help. And so he's watching a young man who he watched grow up from a boy to a man. And now he's possibly about to lose his life just by coming to visit Mr. Willie's store, right? And it sounds like, some people may hear that and say, oh, that's not possible, but it is possible because it happens, right? With the whole seize and frisk, whatever policies that a lot of these police departments have, it could just be your day where a police officer just feels like stopping you. And now you got to have this, altercation. So with the combination of all those perspectives, it was kind of hard to combine them all. So I had each poet write an individual poem. And then Ephraim Nehemiah, who plays Keyshawn, he took on the task of finding intersecting points in the poem where we could combine all the poems together to create that stream of consciousness that I spoke about earlier. So that whole process in itself was very different from any other filmmaking process I've witnessed because it was so heavily dependent on the poetry, right? So that's a little bit like insight about that process and the different perspectives of the bystanders.
That is actually really unique in the way that you've actually solicited other individuals' voices in order to create this film, honoring the fact that other people's voices are exactly what you're looking for. And you actually included that in the film of saying, let's have poets actually create this. Right. How did you go about finding them?
Yeah, so my friend, great friend, Akila Devine, she plays Ebony in Paralysis. She's a wonderful poet, rapper, and singer. She's really tapped into the poetry scene. So, I had her, be my casting director when it came to the poets. I was like, you already know who's who in the poetry scene. She knows, who could deliver, what we were trying to accomplish. So she reached out to different poets, and then we got connected to other poets through the people that she reached out to. We did have a problem, not a problem, but it took a little bit longer to find Mr. Willie's character because, older generation. And there is like a difference between a young poet today and a poet from a previous generation, right? It's a different vibe. It's a different cadence. It's a different, it's a generational gap, right? But Analysis, who plays Mr. Willie, he came through and he fully understood the assignment and he just like over delivered. So yeah, it was great to see how everything came together and we got the right poets for this particular story.
Again, this film is so moving. So when we come back, there's still a lot to discuss. So give us a moment. We'll be right back to continue to talk with Maceo regarding his film Paralysis.
Hi. Can I get the now bar, please?
No problem. $1.
Have a good one.
Got it.
Hi, can I get a now bar, please?
$1.
Thanks.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey.
Hey, let me get a now bar.
Sure. $1.
Appreciate you.
You got it.
How's it going?
Can I get a now bar?
Hey, stop right there! Get down on the ground out of your flat rank, you can't! Show me your hand! Now!
I do love what I do for a living. I never dreamed that having this career was possible until I came to UDC. I met a professor when I decided to finish up my degree program. She told me, hey, why don't you go and intern on Capitol Hill? The internship led to being a staffer. I would have never been opened up to that opportunity if that professor would have never urged me and said, I see something in you. My UDC experience changed my life. UDC helped me find my possible.
Find your possible. Visit udc.edu/possible to learn more.
Welcome back. Today we're here talking to Maceo, where we are talking about his film Paralysis. This is a very moving film regarding individuals who really find themselves paralyzed when they are witnessing a traumatic event. Thank you again so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So part of the way that we review films for this show is that I have a group of students who work with me. I'm so fortunate to have them, and they watch the film and we discuss the film together. And I have to say, this is one of the films that really shook us. It stayed with us. Weeks after, we were still talking about it and still could feel this film. What impact do you want this film to have on audiences?
That's a great question. So we had 3 screenings for this film in theaters and one at Morgan State University. And the Q&A sessions were just very powerful, very insightful. And it just, the film generates, it kind of just sparks conversation, right? It's not one of those films where you can just watch it and say, oh, that was great, and then walk out the theater. Like, no, you kind of got to like sit there and debrief and like recalibrate and, and just kind of wrap your mind around what you just experienced, right? And it was great to hear other people's opinions or perspectives on the film. And just bringing people together, that sense of community, and having those conversations where, like the initial question when I first went into this process was like, are people even having these conversations after the fact, or is it only like a heat of the moment type of thing? So I'm hoping that this film really gets people to question or think about the people in these communities that have to live with this kind of like this cloud just hanging over their community. It's already, when we're talking about impoverished communities or marginalized communities, it's already like a cloud of gloom, hovering over these communities. And then when you have law enforcement come in and do unjust things to these communities, and this is the very same people who are supposed to protect and serve, how does it make these people feel, right? They're already at the bottom of the totem pole, and then the very people who are supposed to help them are hurting them, right? So I just hope it opens people's eyes to the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions that people carry when they're witnessing these type of things, and just get people to think twice about having like snap reactions or quick witty responses, or having, these one-sided opinions and not being able to look at it from the other side, right? Mm-hmm. I think we could have if we could start having these open conversations with people of different races and all walks of life, I think we would get some sense of understanding, and that will start the process of healing, right? So overall, I'm hoping that this film will be a community builder. I'm hoping that this film will, be a catalyst for healing, and also just giving people a voice. I think, like I said, it's a conversation starter, and it kind of like moves people in a way where now they want to talk about, trauma that they've encountered or witnessed or had to live with and deal with. Hearing different people in the audience talk about gun violence and how they lost certain people to gun violence, hearing a woman talk about how her brother was killed unjustly by police, and they're still fighting for justice to this very day. And it's been 20 plus years, right? So I didn't know it was going to affect people, so directly, that people who actually encountered this. But the sense of gratitude that they showed me at these screenings was like, okay, cool. I am doing something that's impacting people and making people feel heard and seen.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I definitely think that this film gives individuals voices, certainly. And again, hearing so many different perspectives, we really get an opportunity to see how one traumatic event is filtered so differently and similarly to people who are watching it. It's so interesting when I say this film is so moving because and how it shook individuals to see it. We had an opportunity because there were certain individuals who weren't there that day when we screened it to be able to generate thoughts regarding what we wanted to talk to you about. And I said, why don't we watch it again? And then I thought, actually, some of the students was like, I can't watch it again. It's so hard to watch. And, we're seeing these films that are not necessarily from filmmakers in our communities that are being filmed of individuals being victimized.
Mhm.
And then we see also filmmakers depicting that because this is what is happening within our communities. These are the conversations we want to have. But then there's such a burden of responsibility of also how do we show what's happening and not traumatize more? And so
Right.
I'm wondering, how do you do that as a filmmaker?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it reminds me of when I went to a documentary screening of it was a Black Panthers documentary directed by Stanley Nelson. And he was visiting Baltimore for one of the screenings. And I think either myself or somebody asked, like, you know, what do we do now type of question, right? Like it was reflecting on the history of the Black Panthers, but like, what about now? And at the time, I didn't really understand his answer, but basically he was pretty much saying like, I'm a filmmaker. I highlight the situations. I ask the questions. I don't necessarily have all the answers, right?
Mhm.
And at the time, I was so like militant. I was like, what? How you gonna make this film and not have any type of solution? But now that I'm in that predicament, it's like, it took so much brain power and so much energy to just create this thing and bring it out, and bring it to the world, bring it into fruition. It's like, okay, maybe my job is just to highlight these issues and hopefully that'll spark the voice or spark the mind who can find a solution for this or bring community together who can work together to find that solution, right? And I did question, like, man, I really don't want to like traumatize people even more, right? But my mom always tells me the first step for healing is actually acknowledging the problem. So if we don't talk about these things and try to ignore them as if they're not happening, then we'll never find any type of sense of healing, right? We got to have these tough conversations to even get to the beginning of the healing process. But with that being said, I also thought about like, maybe I need to bring in some psychiatrists to like be on standby for these screenings, right? Somebody else suggested like having town hall meetings to bring it more to the public. And at those town hall meetings, we also have resources for therapy, right? We have resources for mental health on hand right there, right after the screening. Because who knows, this might be something that catapults somebody into going into therapy, right? I actually was in therapy when I made the film, right? So this is like the most I've ever delved into my, trauma, right? I also suffer from sleep paralysis. So the title of the film Paralysis is like an extension of what I go through from time to time with my mental health, right? So I don't know if I have the answers or solutions to not, to make sure I'm not traumatizing people more. But I'm hoping as the film continues to be shown and continues to garner attention that hopefully the right resources will come together so that I can direct people in the right direction so that they can get the healing that they need.
I hear your understanding of healing and how that is your hope for this.
Right.
And I ask filmmakers all the time, and I will ask you this question for our final question, but directly. Do you feel like art heals?
That's a great question. And I'm going to say not necessarily. I feel like art can serve different purposes for each individual, right? I feel like art is all about discovery, right? So one person's interpretation may be different than another's. Somebody might watch my film and it may be the catalyst for them to, talk about what they're going through internally. somebody else might watch the film and say, oh man, I need to do something. I need to put boots on the ground right now, get out into the community and start working, right? So one person may seek healing, the other person may seek action, somebody else may just need some more time to reflect, right? So for me, I think art is about discovery, whether it's discovery of a different topic, a discovery of history that you didn't know about before, or even discovery of self, right? Getting a better understanding and knowledge of yourself. I feel like art can do all of those things. Healing is different for everybody, right? It's going to look different for each individual. So I won't say art as a whole heals, because some art is meant to stir things up. Some art is meant to be a disruption. And I feel like Paralysis is, on the borderline of one of those films or one of those art pieces.
I would agree. I definitely think you were successful in stirring things up for conversation, for emotional, evocative experiences for the audience. Again, this is certainly a film that will stay with me, and I'm sure that it will stay with our team as well. This is a film we think about and feel about very often. Thank you so much for your work in this capacity. I am hopeful that people can see this film, talk about this film, feel about this film, and like you mentioned, discover what's next potentially for them.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me. Thanks to you and your students for even considering, bringing me into this conversation. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate, people understanding the message.